Welcome to Roots Reckonings, where we explore topics that can be difficult to navigate but important to understand. Today, we're taking a look at Uganda. Idi Amin, to be exact.
The name itself just conjures these images of brutality, doesn't it? A dictator, his reign in Uganda, just synonymous with terror.
Absolutely.
But there's more to it than just the headlines.
Right. Now, what if I told you his rise to those terrifying 8 years that followed were actually tangled up with some, actually surprising historical forces, unexpected alliances, even personal eccentricities that were just off the charts bizarre.
It's a really complex story.
Yeah, it is. It's far from more than just a simple narrative of a madman running wild. His rise, his actions, they reflect his very real challenges, the power vacuums in post-colonial Africa.
And the Cold War politics mixed in.
Exactly. Magnified by Cold War dynamics and, yes, of course, his own unsettling personality.
Yeah, that's pretty much our mission today. So, let's unpack the world of Idi Amin. Where do we even begin? His origins are fuzzy, right?
Right. To really get a handle on the enigma of Idi Amin, you kind of have to look at his beginnings. They are so shrouded in mystery, it almost feels like they foreshadow the unpredictable Idi Amin.
Yeah, even his birthday is up for debate. Could be anywhere from 1923 to 1928. Maybe Koboko, maybe Kampala.
But what we do know is his background is diverse. His father, Andres Nyabire, later known as Amin Dada, was an ethnic Kakwa who converted from Roman Catholicism to Islam.
But there are conflicting reports even about his father.
Some say he may have been ethnic Nubian, raised as a Muslim, with his family possibly originating from Sudan.
One thing's for sure, though. He abandoned Idi Amin and his mother when Amin was young. And Amin was raised by her alone. And his mother, Asa Ate, also known as Aisha Chumaru Ate, was of disputed descent.
She may have been ethnic Kakwa or Lubara, different people living in the northern Uganda. She's a fascinating figure in her own right.
She wasn't just a traditional healer, like a herbalist or a midwife. Nah, she was apparently involved in something called Alawara movement.
Yes.
What was that exactly?
Well, it wasn't just spiritual, right? It was a pretty potent anti-colonial group actively resisting the British, and their methods sometimes involved, interesting elements.
Wow. So that's a pretty unconventional influence in his early life, you could say.
Definitely.
And then there's a really weird story about his paternity.
Oh, yeah. The rumor that his biological father might have been royalty because his mother supposedly cured the queen of Uganda's infertility.
Right. The so-called test. The paternity tests where they left him in the forest alone as a baby for 4 days. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, tribal elders supposedly found him near Mount Lido. They came back, found him alive, and credited Nakan, this sacred 7-headed snake from Kakwa folklore, with protecting him. So he attended an Islamic school in Bamboo in the early 1940s and developed a reputation for reciting the Quran.
But he had very little formal education. In all, his whole early life, contested origin, spiritual stuff, psychedelic plants, it really sets a unique stage, doesn't it?
It really does, for a complex and, often disturbing man he became.
Okay, so from this, let's say, unconventional childhood, he then takes a more familiar path for someone looking to, get ahead. He joins the army.
Right, 1964. He enters the King's African Rifles, the KAR, part of the British colonial army, and surprisingly starts as an assistant cook.
An assistant cook? But he didn't stay there long, right?
No, he shot up the ranks incredibly fast.
He was physically imposing, wasn't he?
Yeah, 6'4", 240 pounds, former Ugandan light heavyweight boxing champ, a good swimmer.
Yeah, built like a tank. But there was that famous quote from one of his officers.
Ah, yeah. The splendid and good rugby player, but virtually burned from the neck up. Quote,
Pretty dismissive.
yeah, and need things explained in words of one letter.
Yeah, it doesn't really scream future leader, does it?
And it's worth remembering, he falsely claimed he fought in the Burma campaign in World War II.
He actually joined after the war in 46.
Okay, so maybe not the sharpest tool according to some.
But then we hit this chilling, really chilling moment. A huge red flag looking back that was just ignored.
Yeah, the Turkana massacre in 1962.
Yeah, this happened just months before Uganda's independence. His unit was on a cattle resettling assignment near the Kenyan border, and things got brutal.
Extremely. Reports say his platoon tortured, beat, even buried villagers alive. He reportedly threatened to cut off the penis of every Turkana man he found rustling cattle and followed through on his threat. Complaints were made, bodies exhumed. But the British authorities decided not to court-martial him.
Why on earth not? I mean, why not?
Well, the reasoning was, it was politically impossible. I mean, he was one of only 2 black commissioned officers in the colonial army, and independence was literally weeks away. Mind you, Uganda itself was a colonial construct, lacking strong ethnic or religious coherence, and the British regime exacerbated internal divisions by favoring certain groups like the Bagadans, who were mostly Protestants, often overruling Muslim elements in the north.
Wow, so political expediency over justice.
I mean, even then,
That really raises massive questions, doesn't it?
like, what was the real long-term cost of law letting him off the hook like that?
Exactly, right? This man who becomes the monstrous dictator gets a pass on an atrocity right at the start. It's like it set a tone.
Precisely. It's a chilling example of how those colonial era decisions made for short-term political reasons just planted seeds for future disaster. It basically told Amin that accountability was negotiable and paved the way for worse, way worse later on.
Pretty much. So after Uganda got independence in October of 62, his promotions just kept coming. Captain, he got majored in 63, deputy commander in 64. By 1970, he's running the whole armed forces. And it wasn't just military stuff, right? I mean, he got mixed up with the Prime Minister Milton Obote on some shady deals.
Yeah, gold and ivory smuggling. Real partnership built on corruption. And that relationship that eventually soured would be a key factor in what happened next. A very dangerous foundation. Okay, so Amin is now commander of the armed forces. But the rift starts opening up between him and the Prime Minister, Obote.
Right. Amin had been cleverly, or maybe not so cleverly, packing the army with his own guys. Kakwa people from the north, fellow Muslims, building his own power base within the military. And money issues are coming up.
Big time. Allegations of financial misconduct against Amin were swirling. Obote was getting really suspicious. Apparently, he even tried to sideline Amin in 1970. Started preparing charges.
But he didn't move fast enough.
Exactly. He underestimated Amin's ambition, his ruthlessness, which turned out to be a massive mistake. In January 25th, 1971, Obote is out of the country on the Commonwealth Summit in Singapore. And Amin strikes. Launches a military coup, takes Kampala, the radio stations, and Tabe airports.
Textbook. And how did he sell it, though? How did he present this blatant power grab?
Initially, very shrewdly, he called himself the restorer of constitution, claimed the military government was just temporary, a caretaker thing, promised new elections, even let some political prisoners go.
So he played a good guy at first.
Absolutely. And he worked it, too. For a bit, he got some international backing, particularly from Britain and Israel. They saw him as better than Obote, who they thought was leaning too socialist.
It's kind of amazing how quickly the story took hold internationally, isn't it? Especially knowing what came next. And was anyone calling it out back then?
Well, I'm sure some were skeptical, but, the immediate chaos, the desire for stability internationally, plus Amin's promises, it allowed him to look relatively benign initially. But that mask slipped really fast, breathtakingly fast. Just a week after the coup, February 2nd, 1971, boom, he declares himself president of Uganda. Commander-in-chief. suspends part of the Constitution, sets up military tribunals.
So much for restoring the Constitution. A swift, decisive turn to dictatorship.
Absolutely. And this was where the real machinery of oppression starts getting built. He disbanded the General Service Unit, the GSU.
The SRB, notorious for torture and capital punishments.
Yes, officially, it was an intelligence agency. In reality, it quickly became a nerve center for torture, executions, wiping out anyone seen as opposition. It was just the regime's iron fist, basically reaching everywhere.
And the killing started almost right away.
Immediately, he purged the army, anyone loyal to Obuti, especially from the Oli and Lango ethnic groups. They were targets. Thousands were removed from their positions in governments and military, often not merely stripped of power, but killed.
We're talking massacres, right?
Ginger barracks in July 79, horrific accounts. Bodies dumped in River Nile, just discarded. The scale of the early violence is chilling.
And it wasn't just soldiers. Prominent people were targeted too.
Oh yeah, very quickly the restorer inmate vanished. Benedo Kiwanuka, former PN Chief Justice, he dared to criticize Amin. Arrested, brutally murdered in September 72.
This was bad, wasn't it?
Yeah, the accounts from defectors were just sickening. Ears, nose, lips severed, castrated, disemboweled, set on fire, just pure savagery. It's unbelievable.
The Anglican Archbishop Jelani Luama too.
Yeah, also killed. The official story was a car accident, but nobody believed it. This early period just set the tone for the absolute horror to come. The final death toll, estimates range wildly, from 100,000 to maybe 500,000 people. Just staggering numbers. He also showed great preference to a small Muslim minority, who by 1977 occupied 80% of top military and government positions, despite making up barely 6% of the population.
So after consolidating power through terror, he turns to the economy, his so-called economic war.
Yeah, August 1972. This leads to one of the most infamous and economically ruinous decisions, kicking out Uganda's entire Asian minority.
How many people are we talking about?
Somewhere between 50,000 and 60,000 people, mostly of Indian descent. They were the backbone of Uganda's commerce, really.
90 days? Why? What was the justification?
He claimed it was a message from God in a dream. Called the Asians brown Jews. It was pure xenophobia, mixed with the plan to seize their assets and give them to his loyalists.
Brown Jews? That's quite a statement. What happened to their business and property?
Well, it was a total disaster for the country. These businesses, crucial for trade, industry, everything, they were just handed over to Amin's cronies. People who often couldn't even read or write properly, let alone run a business.
So, just mismanagement.
Widespread mismanagement, yeah. Vital industries like cement production just collapsed. The entire economic infrastructure basically imploded. Inflation went through the roof, massive shortages of everything. He effectively stripped the country bare. A self-inflicted economic catastrophe. Meanwhile, in the world stage, he's doing his diplomatic dance initially liked by the West and UK and Israel.
All right, they saw him as anti-Obote, anti-socialist, but that changed. What caused the shift?
He wanted sophisticated military hardware weapons. The Western powers refused. So Amin, ever the pragmatist and opportunist, just pivoted towards Libya, Gaddafi, and the Soviet Union. The Soviets quickly became his biggest supplier. Tanks, jets, missiles, you name it. Even East Germany got involved, helping train his secret police, the SRB, refining the tools of repression.
So he's getting weapons from the East Bloc. And then his public persona starts getting, well, weird. Increasingly bizarre.
Yeah, he launched that sarcastic Save Britain fund when the UK economy was struggling, offered to mediate the conflict in Northern Ireland.
As if they were taking up on that. But it gets stranger, doesn't it?
Much stranger. After Britain broke off diplomatic ties in 77, he declared he defeated the British, gave himself the title Conqueror of the British Empire, CBE.
Added to his already absurd long list of titles, like Lord of all beasts of the earth and fish of the sea.
That's the one. Or maybe the peak of his bizarre, he claimed he was the uncrowned king of Scotland.
Wait, he what?
The uncrowned king of Scotland. He even dressed up the Ugandan army regiment in Scottish kilts. He later offered his services as king to some Scottish paramilitary group.
Kilt in the Ugandan army. King of Scotland. I mean, what was going on there? Was he just calculated Provocation, or was he genuinely losing touch with reality?
That's a great question. And it's probably a bit of both. He loved the attention and loved provoking people, but also suggests a growing megalomania, maybe a detachment from reality that just kept spiraling. For him, these titles were likely real. Amidst all the theater, there were real, deadly, serious events happening.
Like the Entebbe raid.
Yeah, June 1976. A huge moment. Amin led an Air France plane hijacked by Palestinian and German terrorists land at Entebbe. The Palestinian and German terrorists holding mostly Israeli hostages. And the Israelis launched an incredibly daring rescue mission.
They did. Succeeded in rescuing almost everyone.
But Amin's reprisal was swift and brutal.
Dora Blanche.
Yeah, Dora Blanche, an elderly British-Israeli hostage. She'd been taken to a hospital in Kampala after the raid. Amin's men dragged her from the hospital bed, reportedly screaming and murdered her.
Just pure vengeance. Senseless.
Absolutely horrific. And it didn't even end there. Hundreds of Kenyans living in Uganda were subsequently killed too. Amin blamed Kenya for supposedly helping Israel with the raid. Even made these baseless claims about Kenyan territory belonging to Uganda.
So by late 70s, the regime was just completely off the rails.
Absolutely. His behavior became more erratic, more unpredictable and violent. There's that theory from an Israeli doctor.
About syphilis, right?
Yeah, that he might have had tertiary syphilis, causing brain damage, affecting his judgment, which might explain some of the really extreme stuff, like the telegram to the UN Secretary General Kurt Waldheim. That notorious telegram praising Hitler, suggesting the Holocaust involved burning Jews alive with gas, saying Hitler knew Israelis were working in the interest of the people in the world. I'm not sure.
It was just vile. A clear sign of mental deterioration, maybe, and definitely embracing extreme ideologies. And then things were falling apart, internally too, with the military.
Definitely. Growing discontent, a split emerged between his loyalists and supporters of his vice president, Mustafa Adrisi. And you started seeing high-profile people getting out.
Defections.
Yeah, big ones. Big ones. His finance minister, Emmanuel Obo Wakyua, the health minister, Henry Kemba. He wrote a book, The State of Blood.
Ah, yes. I gave a real insider's view of the horror.
Exactly. These defections really expose the brutality and instability to the world. And Amin's response to the internal pressure? Start a war. The Uganda and Tanzania War, November 1978.
What kicked that off?
It seemed to be a mix of things. Maybe some of his troops mutinied and crossed into Tanzania and he lost control, or maybe he deliberately escalated it, trying to distract from problems at home.
To rally support.
Yeah, classic dictator move. And then, true to form, the bizarre gesture. He challenges Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere to a boxing match.
Seriously? To settle the war?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Winner takes all, apparently. Even suggested Muhammad Ali could be the referee.
A boxing match. We just can't make this stuff up. Nyerere didn't accept, I assume.
Nah. And besides Amin's troops making some initial gains in the Tanzanian Kagera region, the Tanzanians, helped by Uganda's exile, including the young Yoweri Museveni, who later became president.
Right.
They pushed back hard. Amin got help from Libya and the PLL, but his army just crumbled. April 11, 1979. Amin fled by helicopter. His 8-year reign of terror was over.
Where did he go?
First to Libya. Then Gaddafi kicked him out. Eventually, the Saudi royal family gave him sanctuary in Jeddah on one condition. He stayed out of politics completely, which he mostly did, apart from one failed attempt in 1989.
Right. He tried to get back through Zaire?
Yeah, through Zaire. Tried to mobilize a rebel force, but it fizzled out fast, and the Saudis forced him back to Jeddah.
So he lived out his days there?
Pretty much. Reports described his life as kind of empty, gym, massage parlors. He died there on August 16th, 2003.
From kidney failure. Buried in a simple grave.
And this is the kicker, right? Despite everything, the hundreds of thousands dead, the the torture, the destruction, the exact death toll under Amin's regime is still unknown.
But estimates range wildly.
The International Commission of Jurists estimate at least 80,000 to 300,000 deaths. Exile organizations with Amnesty International's help placed the number as high as 500,000. Some census records suggest a population decline between 420 to 800,000.
Henry Kimbe, his health minister, stated that Amin often boasted about eating human flesh and that his Squaca tribe practiced blood rituals of slain enemies. There are specific horrific accounts, such as him displaying the severed head of Brigadier Soleimani at the state dinner.
While he claims to, and evidence points to the grotesque fascination with, the definite proof of him personally consuming human flesh remains in the realm of his boasts and rumors, rather than verified facts. However, the brutality, torture, and mutilation were undeniable. After all these horrific and grotesque acts, he was just never tried, never faced the international court for his crimes. He just lived out his days in comfortable exile, never faced justice. So that's the story. Complex, terrifying, bizarre. Idi Amin, his legacy is just devastating for Uganda, a country with so much promise, brought to ruin, mass grave, the shattered economy.
And his rule really does highlight those huge challenges of post-colonial nation building, doesn't it?
And how external powers often get involved for their own reasons, propping up or opposing figures like Amin. It forces you to ask some tough questions, I think. When you look back, how much did the actions or maybe inactions of international powers, the British ignoring the Turkana massacre,
the Cold War players backing him initially, how much did that contribute to the rise and him staying in power for so long?
And that's a really important point. And maybe the biggest question his story leaves us with. The fact that he died in exile, never held accountable for his atrocities on such a massive scale. What does that tell us about international justice? About how we hold powerful people responsible for horrific crimes? It's a question that still feels incredibly relevant today, long after Idi Amin himself is gone. Something for all of us, I think, to really mull over. What is justice? And what does that look like? You've been listening to Roots and Reckonings.